I wasn't supposed to be on the road that night. I know that sounds like something people always say after something bad happens, but in my case, it was true in a very literal sense. I checked the weather twice before leaving my apartment. The forecast said light snowfall, maybe 2 or 3 inches by morning. Nothing severe. Nothing that would justify canceling plans or calling out of work. I'd driven through worse dozens of times. I was 24 at the time, working security for a manufacturing plant in a neighboring town. The pay wasn't great, but it covered rent, and the night shifts were quiet enough that I could listen to podcasts and kill time. When my supervisor called and asked if I could cover an extra overnight shift because someone had called in sick, I said yes without really thinking about it. That was my first mistake. By the time I left, the snow had already started, thin flakes drifting lazily under the streetlights. The kind of snow that looks harmless, almost peaceful. I remember feeling annoyed more than worried, brushing snow off my windshield and muttering about how forecasts were always wrong. The highway was nearly empty. Just me, my headlights, and miles of dark road stretching ahead. For the first 30 minutes, everything was fine. Then the snow got heavier. The flakes turned thicker, wetter, clumping together and sticking to the glass. I turned the wipers up another notch, then another. The sound they made scraping back and forth became oddly loud in the quiet car. Radio reception faded the farther I drove. Eventually, it dissolved into static. I shut it off and drove in silence. That's when I noticed how dark everything had become. There were no houses out there, no streetlights, just endless forest on both sides of the highway, tall pine trees standing like black silhouettes against the gray-white sky. The snow reflected my headlights in a way that made it feel like I was driving through a tunnel of light with nothing beyond it. Visibility dropped fast, 20 feet, maybe less. I slowed down, hands tightening on the steering wheel. My tires crunched softly over the snow-covered asphalt, a sound that somehow made everything feel more fragile. I told myself I'd be fine. I just needed to keep steady. Then the back end of the car slid. It happened so suddenly that my brain barely had time to process it. One moment I was driving straight. The next, the rear tires lost traction and the car drifted sideways. I overcorrected. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. The headlights swung wildly, illuminating nothing but spinning snow and trees rushing closer. The car spun once, maybe twice, before slamming hard into something soft but solid. The snowbank swallowed the front end with a dull, muffled impact. The engine stalled instantly. For a few seconds, I just sat there, stunned. My heart hammered in my chest, so hard I could feel it in my throat. The world outside the car was completely still, the only sound the faint tick of cooling metal and my own breathing. I tried the ignition. The engine turned, coughed, then died. I tried again. Nothing. That's when the reality of my situation started to sink in. I was alone, stranded, on a highway with no traffic, no cell service, and a storm that was only getting worse. I reached for my phone anyway, more out of desperation than logic. No signal, not even one bar. I leaned back in the seat and stared through the windshield, trying to slow my breathing. Snow was already piling up against the hood, creeping higher by the minute. That's when I saw the footprints. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Snow does weird things in low light. Shadows shift. Shapes form where nothing actually exists. But these were clear, distinct. A line of footprints emerged from the trees on the right side of the road. They were deep, well-defined, pressed firmly into the fresh snow as if whoever made them had some weight to them. They crossed the road at an angle and stopped right next to my driver's side door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My entire body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. There were no other tracks. No signs of a car pulling over. No reason for anyone to be out there on foot in the middle of a snowstorm. I slowly turned my head toward the driver's side window. The glass was fogged from my breath, blurring everything beyond it. I wiped a small circle clear with my sleeve. I wish I hadn't. Something was standing just outside the door. I couldn't see its face clearly, only a tall, dark shape looming close to the glass. It didn't move. It didn't knock. It just stood there. Then, very slowly, it leaned forward. The car shifted slightly as weight pressed against the door. Not a shove, Not an attempt to break in. Just enough pressure to let me know it was there. Testing. Waiting. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure it could hear it. I locked the doors, even though I knew that wouldn't matter much if it really wanted to get inside. The pressure stayed for several seconds, then increased. The metal creaked softly. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle in my body tensed, expecting the window to shatter at any moment. But it didn't. Instead, the pressure eased. I heard footsteps crunching away from the car, slow and deliberate. I forced myself to keep my eyes closed until the sound faded. When I finally looked again, the figure was gone. The footprints continued across the road, then disappeared into the trees on the other side. I stayed in that car for hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching snow bury the tracks, erase any proof that someone or something had been there with me. Every so often, I thought I heard movement in the woods. Branches snapping, snow falling from trees. Nothing ever came close again. By the time a snowplow finally found me near dawn, I was shaking uncontrollably, fingers numb and stiff around steering wheel. The driver asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. Later, when the police asked me what happened, they exchanged glances when I mentioned the footprints. One of them finally said something I still think about whenever it snows. "There's no foot traffic out there," he told me. "No trails, no cabins, nothing for miles." I never took night shifts again, and I still refuse to drive past mile marker 143. I don't like telling this story because it makes me sound reckless. Looking back, I know we ignored a lot of red flags. But at the time, none of them felt serious enough to justify turning around. They felt like the kind of things you laugh about later, assuming you get the chance to laugh about them. We didn't. There were 4 of us, me, my girlfriend at the time, Jenna, and our friends Aaron and Lucas. We were all in our early 20s, broke, tired of work, and desperate to get away for a few days. When Aaron found a cabin rental deep in the mountains for less than half the price of anything else, we jumped on it immediately. The listing was vague. 1 bedroom, generator-powered electricity, with stove for heat, no cell service. Off-grid experience, it said. That should have been our first warning. The drive-up took longer than expected. The road narrowed the farther we went, eventually turning into a single-lane path car between dense walls of pine trees. Snow covered everything. Not deep yet, but enough to hide the edges of the road. By the time we reached the cabin, it was already getting dark. It sat alone in a clearing, surrounded by trees so thick they blocked out the sky. The place looked older than the pictures online. Weathered wood, a sagging porch, and a metal chimney rising from the roof like a rusted spine. Still, it was warm inside. The generator worked. The stove lit without much effort. We told ourselves everything was fine. That night, the snow started falling harder. By midnight, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and howling through the trees like something alive. The cabin creaked and popped as the temperature dropped. Every sound felt louder in the quiet. I woke up at some point, needing to use the bathroom. As I passed the front window, I noticed something strange. A faint yellow light flickering deep in the trees. At first, I assumed it was a reflection, maybe from our own cabin or the stove fire. I leaned closer to the glass. It wasn't a reflection. The light was steady, warm, and definitely not coming from our cabin. I stood there for a few seconds, staring into the darkness, trying to place it. There weren't supposed to be any other cabins nearby. The rental listing specifically mentioned complete isolation. I didn't wake anyone up. I figured maybe the owner had another place farther out, or maybe my tired brain was filling in details that weren't really there. I went back to bed. The storm got worse overnight. By morning, snow had piled halfway up the windows. The door was nearly blocked. The wind screamed nonstop, and the trees bent and groaned under the weight of ice. That's when we realized we were stuck. The road we'd come in on was completely buried. Even if we could dig the car out, there was nowhere to go. No service. No way to call for help. Aaron tried to laugh it off, saying it was like being in a survival movie. No one else laughed. Around noon, Jenna noticed the light again. "It's still there," she said quietly, pointing through the window. This time we all saw it. Same warm yellow glow, pulsing gently through the trees. It hadn't moved. It hadn't gone out. It hadn't gotten brighter or dimmer with the storm. It just existed, Lucas was the first to say what we were all thinking. There shouldn't be anyone else out here. We argued about it for a while. Aaron insisted it was probably another rental cabin that wasn't listed properly. Jenna thought it could be a ranger station. I stayed quiet, watching the trees. The snow beneath them was untouched. No tracks, no paths, nothing leading toward the light. Eventually, curiosity won. We bundled up and headed out. The cold hit hard the moment we stepped outside. The snow came down thick and heavy, swallowing sound and visibility. Within seconds, the cabin behind us looked distant and small. The light guided us. The cabin it came from was closer than it looked, but still far enough that I felt uneasy the entire walk. It sat partially hidden behind trees, older and smaller than ours. And it was wrong. The windows were iced over from the inside, thick frost crawling across the glass in jagged patterns. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, but there was no wind disturbance around it, as if it were disconnected from a storm. There were no footprints. None. The snow around the cabin was perfectly smooth, untouched by human movement. It was as if the place had been dropped there after the storm began. The door wasn't locked. Inside, it was warm, uncomfortably warm. A fire burned low in the stone fireplace, embers glowing red. A single wooden chair sat in the middle of the room, facing the flames. No dust, no cobwebs, no signs of abandonment, but no signs of anyone living there either. Then I noticed the photographs. They covered one entire wall. Dozens of them, all taken at night. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Dark shapes, blurry interiors. Then my eyes adjusted, and my stomach dropped. They were pictures of people sleeping. Some in beds, some on couches, some in cars, all taken from distance. All taken without the subject's knowledge. One photo showed a man slumped over the steering wheel of a sedan, snow piled around the windows. Another showed a family asleep in a small cabin that looked disturbingly familiar. Then Jenna gasped. She pointed at a photograph near the center of the wall. It was Aaron, lying on the couch, in our cabin, taken through the front window. The angle was unmistakable. The lighting was recent. None of us spoke. The fire crackled softly behind us. I felt a sudden, overwhelming certainty that we were not alone in that room. We ran. The cold outside felt unreal after the heat. Snow lashed at our faces as we sprinted back toward our cabin, panic erasing any sense of direction. The trees seemed closer together now, the clearing harder to find. When our cabin finally came into view, relief washed over me until I saw the door. It was open. We'd locked it. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it, except the couch. Aaron's blanket was folded neatly, the pillow placed carefully at one end, as if someone had tidied up while we were gone. That's when we heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy, circling the cabin. Not rushing, not hiding, just walking. Crunch, pause, crunch, over and over. We killed the lights and huddled together, barely breathing. Shadows past the windows, stretching and shrinking as the figure, or figures, moved around outside. At one point, a hand pressed against the glass. Just rested there, not trying to get in, waiting. The footsteps didn't stop until dawn. When we finally worked up the courage to look outside, the snow was smooth and untouched. No tracks, no signs anyone had ever been there. We left as soon as the road was cleared. Before we drove away, I asked the owner about the other cabin. He looked confused. There isn't another cabin, he said. Hasn't been for decades. Later, I found an old local article online. A remote mountain cabin burned down 20 years ago during a winter storm. Authorities suspected someone had been living there illegally. They were never found. I worked overnight dispatch for just under 3 years, and in that time, I learned something important. Most emergency calls are boring. People imagine screaming, chaos, life or death drama every minute. In reality, it's mostly fender benders, locked cars, drunk arguments, power outages, and people panicking over things that aren't actually emergencies. That night started exactly like that. The blizzard warnings had been issued all afternoon. Heavy snowfall, high winds, whiteout conditions. By the time my shift started at 11 p.m., most police units were already stretched thin, and road crews were pulling off the highways. We knew it was going to be a long night. Calls came in steadily for the first few hours. Cars sliding off the road. People stranded at gas stations. One guy who insisted his neighbor's snowman looked threatening. Nothing unusual. Around 1:40 a.m., the call volume dropped sharply. That happens during bad storms. People stop driving. Roads empty. The world goes quiet. I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee when my console beeped. Incoming call. No caller ID. That wasn't unusual either. Cell towers glitch in storms, and older phones sometimes don't transmit properly. I answered the line. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. Then a man's voice, low and tight, like he was trying not to be heard. I think someone's outside my car. I straightened in my chair. Sir, where are you right now? Another pause. I could hear wind through the phone, a dull roar like air rushing through trees. I pulled over, he said. The road disappeared. That made sense. Whiteouts erase everything. People lose the sense of where the road ends and the ditch begins. Are you injured? I asked. No, he said quickly. I'm not hurt. I don't think I'm alone. I pulled up the location screen. His phone was transmitting GPS, weak but readable. He was on a Forest Service road just off Highway 18. That road was closed. Sir, I said carefully, that area is under a travel ban. How long have you been stopped? I don't know, he said. Maybe 15 minutes? I lost control a bit, slid, but I didn't hit anything. I just stopped. Okay, I said. I need you to stay in your vehicle. Help is limited right now, but I'll see what units are available. I flagged the call and checked the board. Every unit within 30 miles was either already responding to accidents or grounded due to conditions. I swallowed. Sir, I said, I want you to tell me exactly what you're seeing. He took a breath. I can't see much. Snow's coming down hard. My headlights don't go very far. Do you see anyone? I asked. No, he said. Not clearly. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What makes you think someone's outside? Another pause. Then he said, because I can hear breathing. That was the first moment I felt something shift. Breathing carries oddly in snowstorms. Wind is strange things. Sound bends. Still, I didn't like it. Can you describe the sound? I asked. It's close, he whispered. Like, right next to the car. Slow. Steady. Is it inside the vehicle? I asked. No, he said immediately. Outside. Okay, I said, keeping my voice calm. I need you to lock your doors if they aren't already. They are, he said. I locked them as soon as I stopped. Good. Do not exit the vehicle. Can you flash your headlights for me? Already tried, he said. It doesn't react. Whatever it is, it doesn't move away. That didn't make sense. If it was an animal, it would scatter. If it was a person, light usually triggers a response. Sir, I said, I want you to tell me if you see any movement. I don't, he said, but I can hear it shifting. I typed quickly, adding notes to the call log. Okay, I said, I'm staying on the line with you. You're doing the right thing. The wind noise grew louder. Then something else came through the phone. A faint scraping sound. Metallic. Sir, I said, what was that? He didn't answer right away. Then, very quietly, he said, it's touching the car. My stomach tightened. Where is it touching? Driver's side, he said, near the door. I imagined fingers dragging along paint, nails catching on metal. Listen to me, I said. You're safe inside the vehicle. Do not respond to anything outside. Help is on the way. That was a lie, but sometimes lies are necessary. Okay, he whispered. We sat like that for a few seconds, listening to wind and his breathing. Then he spoke again. It stopped breathing. Every instinct in me screamed that this was wrong. Sir, I said, what do you mean it stopped breathing? I can't hear it anymore, he said. It's quiet now. Silence can be worse than noise. Can you see anything near your windows? I asked. No, he said. Snow's sticking to the glass. Okay, I said. Stay with me. You're not alone. That's when the tapping started. 3 slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. They echoed clearly through the phone. I felt a chill run through me. Sir, I said, forcing my voice steady, do not respond. Do not unlock the door. I'm not, he said. I'm not moving. The tapping stopped. Seconds passed. Then he said something I still hear in my dreams. It's not at the door anymore. Where is it now? I asked. I think, he swallowed. I think it climbed up. Up where? My roof. I gripped the edge of my desk. Sir, I said, listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens, do not exit the vehicle. I won't, he said. I can hear it shifting, like it's trying to balance. Snow muffles footsteps, but not weight. Then came a new sound, a deep, hollow thump. The roof. Then another. Slow, deliberate. I typed frantically, requesting any available unit, even a plow, anyone who could get eyes on the area. The response came back quickly. Units unavailable. Conditions unsafe. Sir, I said, I need you to stay calm. This may be debris or ice falling from trees. He let out a shaky laugh. No, he said, it's moving with me. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? When I shift in my seat, he said, it shifts too. Then, very softly, it knows where I am. The line crackled. Sir, I said, stay with me. I don't think it wants to get in, he whispered. I think it wants me to come out. That is not happening, I said firmly. Do you understand me? Yes, he said. I'm staying. There was a long pause. I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then he spoke again. It's lying down now, on the roof. I asked. Yes, he said. I can feel the weight. My hands were shaking. Sir, I said, I need you to tell me if anything changes. He didn't answer. Sir, the phone crackled again. Then I heard something that made my heart stop. A slow inhale, right against the phone. Not his breathing. Something else. It's listening, he whispered. Then the call went dead. I tried calling back. No answer. We sent a location ping request. It failed. The storm continued through the night. 2 days later, after the roads reopened, a state trooper found the car. It was parked neatly on the side of the forest road. Doors locked. Windows intact. The driver was still inside. No signs of a struggle. No cause of death immediately apparent. The report mentioned one detail that never made it into the official summary. There are no footprints anywhere around the vehicle, except one set, on the roof, facing the windshield. I've been driving long haul for over a decade, and if there's one thing you learn early, it's this. Your instincts matter more than the schedule. Dispatch can yell. Logs can get tight. Deadlines can slip. But the moment your gut tells you something's wrong, you listen. Because the road doesn't give second chances. I didn't listen that night. I was hauling a refrigerated load through the upper Midwest, cutting across a stretch of highway I'd driven more times than I could count. The weather report had called for snow, nothing unusual for that time of year. I'd dealt with worse. I always did. By the time the storm actually hit, though, it felt different. The snow didn't fall so much as it erased. The world beyond my headlights vanished into a solid wall of white. The lines on the road disappeared. The sky and the ground blended together until there was no horizon at all. A true whiteout. I slowed to a crawl, knuckles white on the steering wheel, eyes straining to find something. Anything to anchor myself. A sign, a reflector, another vehicle. Nothing. That's when I saw the glow. A faint, steady light ahead on the right side of the highway. Truck stop. Relief washed over me so hard I didn't question it. I eased off the road and followed the light until the shape of a small fuel station emerged from the storm. One pump, one building, no other trucks. That alone should have made me uneasy. Truck stops are like magnets during storms. Drivers cluster there, waiting it out. The fact that this place was empty in conditions like that didn't sit right. But I was tired, cold, and more focused on getting off the road than asking questions. I parked near the pump and killed the engine. The sudden silence was jarring. Snow hit the cab in dull thuds. Wind rocked the trailer gently, like a hand testing my balance. I grabbed my jacket and stepped down. The cold cut straight through me. The snow was thick and fast, but when I looked around, something stood out immediately. My boots left e-prints. The snow around the building didn't. Not even near the door. No tire tracks. No footprints. Nothing to suggest anyone else had been there recently. I told myself the wind had filled them in. Inside, the truck stop was warm. Too warm. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh white glow over shelves that were half empty and slightly dusty. The place smelled faintly of burnt coffee and something metallic. Behind the counter stood the clerk. He was tall, thin, and completely still. He didn't greet me, didn't blink, just stared. Evening, I said, forcing casual into my voice. No response. I walked toward the counter, each step echoing too loudly in the quiet. The bell above the door hadn't rung when I came in. That bothered me more than it should have. "I'll just grab some fuel and a coffee," I said. The clerk nodded once. Slow. I noticed his boots as I reached the counter. They were clean, perfectly dry. Outside, snow was piling up inches at a time. I paid and poured myself a coffee I didn't really want, hands shaking slightly. The clerk watched me the entire time, eyes never leaving my face. "Road's bad out there," I said, trying again. This time he spoke. "You shouldn't stay long." His voice was flat, not unkind, just empty. "Wasn't planning on it," I said. I left immediately. Back in the cab, I locked the doors and started the engine, feeling stupid for how relieved I was to hear it turn over. As I pulled back onto the highway, my mirrors caught something that made my chest tighten. A shape. At first, I thought it was ice or snow sliding off the trailer. Then it moved. Something was sitting on top of my trailer. Low, crouched, facing forward. I blinked hard. Certain exhaustion was messing with me. When I looked again, it was still there. The shape didn't move as the truck gained speed. Snow blasted past it, but clung to the trailer as if it weighed nothing at all, or far too much. I checked my mirrors again and again, heart hammering. There was no way anyone could have climbed up there without leaving tracks. No ladder. No stop long enough for something like that. I slammed the brakes. The truck shuddered, trailer swaying dangerously as we slowed. I watched the mirrors the entire time. The trailer was empty, snow-covered, perfectly normal. I sat there for a long time, breathing hard, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. I drove until daylight without stopping again. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up that stretch of highway, trying to find a truck stop. There was no listing, no business registration, no reviews, no mention of it anywhere. I even asked another driver who ran that route regularly. He frowned and said, "There hasn't been a truck stop there in years." I don't know when I stopped it that night, but I know this. Sometimes the road gives you a place to rest, and sometimes it gives you a reason to keep moving. The avalanche warning didn't feel real. It came through as a notification on my phone while I was standing in the kitchen, watching snow drift past the window in slow, lazy spirals. The kind of snow that looks peaceful enough to make you forget it's dangerous. Avalanche watch in effect. Use caution in backcountry areas. I remember scoffing quietly and setting the phone face down on the counter. We'd lived in that house for almost 4 years. It sat at the base of a wooded slope, far enough down that we never worried about slides. The locals weren't concerned. The previous owner wasn't concerned. Nothing like that had ever happened there before. That's the lie people always believe. It hasn't happened yet, so it won't. The storm intensified after sunset. By 9, the wind had picked up enough to rattle the windows. Snow piled up against the porch steps, creeping higher inch by inch. The power flickered twice, but stayed on. I went to bed thinking I'd wake up to another snowed-in morning. Instead, I woke up to the sound of the world ending. There was no warning rumble, no gradual buildup, just a violent concussive crack followed by pressure so intense it knocked the air out of my lungs. The ceiling collapsed, walls folded inward. Everything went black. For a moment, I didn't understand what had happened. My brain tried to piece together familiar shapes in total darkness. Then the weight hit. Snow, packed so tightly I couldn't move. I was on my side, one arm pinned beneath me, the other pressed awkwardly against my chest. My legs were twisted, trapped by debris I couldn't see. I tried to breathe. I couldn't. Panic surged, wild and immediate. I thrashed instinctively, wasting precious air before forcing myself to stop. Slow breaths, I told myself. Small ones. The snow pressed against my face, filling my mouth and nose if I wasn't careful. Every inhale felt shallow, stolen. The silence was absolute. No wind, no creaking, no voices, just the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. I tried to shout. The snow swallowed the sound instantly. That's when I realized I might be buried alive. I fumbled for my phone with numb fingers. It wasn't in my pocket. It had to be somewhere nearby, but moving even an inch felt impossible. I focused on staying conscious. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time lost meaning in that darkness. Then I heard something. At first, I thought it was ringing in my ears. A side effect of panic. But it came again. A faint scraping sound. Close. Too close. Snow shifted somewhere near my feet. Not a collapse, control movement. As if something was digging. Hope flared in my chest, so suddenly it hurt. Help! I tried to say. The word barely formed. The scraping continued, slow and deliberate. Whoever it was wasn't rushing. That didn't make sense. Anyone trying to rescue someone buried in snow would be frantic, aggressive. Shovels. Yelling. Noise. This was careful. The snow near my face loosened slightly. Enough to let me draw a deeper breath. Relief washed over me, so powerfully I nearly cried. Please, I whispered. I'm here. The scraping stopped. Seconds passed. Then it started again, closer to my head this time. Something brushed my cheek. Not a glove. Bare skin. Cold. The touch lingered for a moment, just long enough for me to register the texture of fingers against my face. Then it withdrew. I froze. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Rescuers talk. They reassure. They announce themselves. This thing didn't. The digging resumed, slower now, almost exploratory. Snow shifted around my head, opening a small pocket of air. I should have felt safer. I didn't. The space was too precise, too intentional. A shape pressed close to my face, blocking what little air I had. I couldn't see it, but I could feel warmth radiating from it. Faint, unnatural in the freezing cold. Then I felt breath. Slow, measured, right against my skin. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed perfectly still. Some part of me knew, deep down, that movement would make things worse. The breathing stayed for several seconds. Then it stopped. The pressure eased. The scraping moved away. I lay there in darkness, trembling, unsure if I'd imagined it. Time passed. The air grew thin again. Panic crept back in, sharper than before. Just when I thought I was going to black out, light broke through. A real voice called my name. Hands grabbed my arms. Strong. Urgent. They pulled me free in a rush of cold air and blinding white. I gasped, coughing snow, tears streaming down my face. Rescue workers surrounded me, shouting, checking vitals, wrapping me in blankets. I clung to the nearest one, babbling incoherently about someone else being down there. There was someone with me. I kept saying. They were digging. The rescuer shook his head gently. You're the only one we found, he said. They airlifted me out. At the hospital, doctors told me I was lucky. That survival time under snow that dense was usually measured in minutes, not hours. I asked them again about the other person. No one humored me this time. A few days later, an investigator came to take my statement. He listened quietly as I described everything. The sounds, the digging, the touch. When I finished, he said something I still don't understand. We found disturbances in the snow near you, he said, but they don't match any rescue equipment or animal movement. I asked him what they matched. He hesitated. Human hands, he said, but there were no other victims. I don't live near mountains anymore. When it snows heavily, I still wake up gasping for air, convinced something is leaning close, deciding whether to keep digging or to stop.